Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the OK Grognard Show. It is Saturday, November 7th, 2020, 10 a.m. Central in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Well, it's Saturday, and that means it's GM Reviews Day. And what are we looking at today, Mark? Well, rather than look at a single product or book or movie or television series or something of that nature like we normally do, I thought we'd just kind of look at the year 2020 from the perspective of a GM and look at specifically the conventions we've had available and have dealt with and have joined in and have missed and have all the rest of that, right? So I'll get out to Johnny Gilbert. Hey, buddy, how you doing? I will get out to 2, 3, sometimes 4 conventions in a given year. I don't go to Gen Con anymore. The big ones, they're generally a little beyond what I'm willing to spend money-wise for the experience. If you haven't gone, you should. You know, if you're younger and you want to, and you haven't been to a Gen Con, you definitely should go to a Gen Con. No doubt about it. For me, though, they're so big that sometimes you can walk miles from one end of the convention to another, depending on what sort of outbuildings they're using. And for events, it's a lot. And I'm not, I'm not saying they're too big. I think they're as big as they get. However many people wind up going to things like that. Now, of course, this year, like almost every convention, they canceled the physical convention, and I think they did it a little bit on the late side and rather hastily put together a sort of a virtual convention. They did this on their own rather than using an established interface for that sort of thing. I know, at least I'm pretty sure I've known this, that they've always had a sort of a virtual component for people that, gaming's an international concern, and there are people on the opposite ends of the earth that certainly couldn't make it every year, if at all, that want to be a part of something like that. And so, I'm sure they have always had some reasonable virtual presence during the course of the actual show. However, this was an unusual year, and I looked over the interface, and it looked like it didn't look all that difficult, but it was more than I wanted to deal with, and I'd already dealt with a couple of different ones at that point, and just didn't add it to the schedule. I've got 5 things that I've been working on. Gamehole, of course, is what's going on this weekend. GMing wise, this is the outlier because there were 1, 2, 3, 4 other shows that I did virtual conventions that I submitted games to as a GM. It's the point of the show today, right? And all of them used tabletop adventures, or tabletop events. And not surprising, Con of Champions, which was a benefit for tabletop events, used their own system. Gary Con used it. Gary Con's Autumn Revel in early October used it. And even earlier in October, Virtual Greyhawk Con used tabletop events as well. That I just find really obviously familiar, but also intuitive. So when I use any other system, it's going to inevitably become compared in my mind for ease of use compared to tabletop events. Once I got used to the game whole con system, not really a problem. Um, I know why they would want to do something in a proprietary way. Usually they're using it for their physical convention. So, if there are any shortcomings, which I really haven't found once I got used to it, between their system, logs you out pretty quick. Um, Between their system on their website and between their Discord channel and server, uh, really haven't had problems. All of my events are in different rooms, so I've got four seminars I'm doing, which are essentially longer versions of the OK Grognard show. So I'm doing them in the same regular time slot, but instead of a half hour, I'm doing 50 minutes. So it fills an hour of convention schedule. Uh, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, I'm doing four of those: Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, including today's the third one. Tomorrow we'll do another one at 10 a.m. All in different rooms. I'm wondering if I wonder how difficult it would have been to. Maybe they don't. Maybe tabletop events uses a program, or some other conventions use programs. Certainly, when the fine fellows Dave Conant and Skip Williams schedule stuff for GaryCon physically, I've found that they do a pretty good job of keeping you in the same location as much as possible for do one event, another event that's similar, such as doing one board game and doing another board game later. I'll be in the board game room, but both times I'll usually have the same table, even on different days, rather than moving around or being difficult to find. It just makes it easier. So I'm doing two slots of Insteading with the Giant, the homage to the Giant series of adventures, running first edition AD&D, and I'm doing those on Saturday and Sunday at 1 o'clock. Both filled up real nice. That's great. In two different rooms on the Discord channel. I may slide them into the OK Grognard show server. Although, that might just be a pain in the ass. It might be easier just to do them on there and not worry about it. Obviously, most of what's going on, or a lot of what's going on, is happening on Roll20 because we're using that interface for the maps and tokens and dice and gameplay. The only thing we're using for Discord for those is the voice channel. And I suppose it's just easy enough to use the one that the schedule's pointing to on the Gamehole Con server, Discord server. So that's probably easy enough. Death Angel Shadow, hey, good to see you. Hope you had a good work week. We only get to see Death Angel Shadow on the weekend anymore. He's working all the time. Right, Jeff? Working too hard, I'll bet, huh? Making those big bucks. It's just better than the alternative, always. Till you retire and just do nothing but paint miniatures, then that's living the dream, right? Plus, you have all those unpainted miniatures that you have to explain to everybody. Yeah, you'd like to have a day off. I hear you. Can I retire yet? Yeah. Soon, buddy. Soon. You don't want to get to the point of retiring too soon anyway, because there are all sorts of other things that come with aging that you can, yeah, they'll get there when you get there when you get there. You don't need to rush. No sense sprinting toward the finish line. Make it a marathon, baby. The So the Gamehole Con interfaces work fine, and from a GM perspective, I've been quite happy with everything they've done. And in truth, this is going to be a very positive sort of thing, um, sort of review. Not that most of mine aren't, but usually I'm cherry picking stuff that I like to review that I've read or watched, whatever, in the past, and I'm bringing it to show people because I want to talk about how great it is. This is a little different, being a GM review of conventions in 2020, in that there's no varnish to put on this one. They are what they are. I've just enjoyed them. Maybe it's me. Maybe I just have a really positive attitude. Oh, I don't want to do that. Might be someone watching that. Can I censor? I could blur it out later. No, it's streaming live. You don't blur stuff like that. Anyway, we had, I should say, too, now I had prepared for 8-9 months for physical GaryCon to happen in late March. Really, right up to, because of the way it fell on the calendar, it essentially was the first convention that got canceled. And because hotels, insurance companies, the top dogs at the conventions all have to do this little dance where they have to avoid liability issues and losing money or going bankrupt, even worse. Everybody's playing chicken with the first or the early ones. I think that happened with the early one in June, even, as that's a couple months into this whole pandemic situation. And I think North Texas RPG Con was doing that too. Although I think in their case, they were more motivated to run it in spite of what was going on, if they could. Whereas it was such a new thing, and there was so little information other than people are dying. We don't know how bad this is or how bad it's going to get, but here it comes, and all of a sudden, all that stuff was hitting us. And I think Luke, rightfully, smartly, and I think it's his birthday today. Happy birthday, Luke Gygax, right? I think rightly he was going to go with what it was, if the authorities, if state governor, because it's in Wisconsin, opted for events to only be allowed to be so big or whatever, and it had to be canceled, it had to be canceled. If they said, events over a certain size couldn't happen, so it goes. And then at that point, he's got cover, and the Grand Geneva, the event location, was covered, to go back to the insurance company and say, hey, we're not even allowed to do it. It's not like we're trying to say we can't do it or don't want to do it. That's just how it is. And now they're covered, and the insurance company had to deal with things the way they had to deal with things. Before, of course, before they got official word, then there was no, what do they call it, force majeure. It's when a circumstances beyond anyone's control. It's almost like an act of God sort of thing. Conspire to cancel an event in that sort of situation. Then in the contract, you have an out to say, we're not liable for losing any money on this. Deposits need to be returned, I believe. We're not going forward. We're not forced to hit minimums for concessions and for fees and for all of this other stuff. So they were able to cancel without anybody being super hurt by it. Though obviously people that had airline tickets, people that had hotel reservations. Hopefully, most, if not all, of everybody got out of those. Um, Again, then, what about the hotels? What about the airlines? They're hurt? Sure. They're going to be hurt. They're expecting not just that people are going to be there, but that they're going to spend extra money while they're there. And even if they have some sort of insurance that covers them for the loss, having to close, not being able to do business as usual, they never make that back. And all the people that work for these places, I know so many service industry people that work at the Grand Geneva, and they're all getting knocked around this year by this thing. Just so few people coming to the area, and you're open, you're closed, you're open at a lower capacity, 25%, I think, as low as it's been in some cases currently. I take that back. I think that latest executive order ended on the 6th of November. So maybe it's the 8th. Technically, when that one expires, restaurants and bars can go back to full capacity. But I don't know if you want to. Numbers are higher than they've ever been. And you're not going to lower those numbers by packing into a tightly closed up space. And as it gets colder and you're not opening the window and air is recirculating within the space, there's an even higher risk of contracting or being infected by other people. And all it takes is one person comes into that location and starts talking loudly and expectorating just a little while they discuss things, or just the act of breathing out puts it into the atmosphere, into the air, and when that gets swept around through an entire location as air circulates, those particles get in everybody, and everybody has a chance of being infected, and apparently a pretty high chance because it's pretty very virulent. Is that the word, John? What do you think? I think that's the right word. Anyway, getting off on a bit of a tangent, but we are talking about conventions, and all of that is very pertinent when it came to the physical GaryCon. Pivot to virtual GaryCon. And I'll be quite honest, I got a Roll20 account. I was looking today at the date. It was June of 2012 when I first signed up for a Roll20 account. There were a couple of Fantasy Grounds, I think, was around already. A lot of people use map tools in conjunction with some sort of conferencing, Zoom or Google Hangouts. So those kind of things existed, but Roll20 was really the dedicated online interface, web-based interface that you could jump into. And I made an account back in June of 2012. But the number of times I played around with it or opened it, I never really used it. And then suddenly we're going virtual last March. I was not at all prepared to pivot. The games that I was running were old school Civilization, Divine Right, board games, war games that I was running. Were not something I could easily pivot to online, even though there are some versions on some. How do you get all these people up to speed when, gather up your players and get those games actually played anyway? So I did not resubmit them or have them transferred over to the virtual side. I had a first edition AD&D game that I run every Saturday since 6-7 years anyway. Since we used to play a regular game on Saturdays, and when the DM couldn't come back out anymore to run it, I offered up my services and have been running one ever since first edition. And so we switch edition, but that's what I like. But having no real experience with Roll20, although I knew and had an account there, I really hadn't used it. I wasn't prepared to run a game with that. So I kind of backed down and just went to seminars, did a lot of that. Um, I don't feel at that time that I was even ready to sit in as a player. Uh, Knowing what I know now, that it's not that difficult, and also knowing that so many other people were in the same boat. I wasn't an outlier. Certainly wasn't alone in being inexperienced with those things. I should have probably taken the plunge, played more, maybe even ran at least one game using Roll20, stumbled through it, whatever. Um, but, in my mind, um, knowing practically nothing, just assumed there's got to be people that know more than me that can be doing this stuff. And certainly, for the last couple of years, there's been a Foundry. Is your Discord? Yeah, yeah. Jeff's saying he's been moving over, migrating to Foundry Virtual Tabletop, which is a very popular one too. Of course, if you're playing 5th edition, a lot of people use D&D Beyond or Foundry or Fantasy Grounds. But Roll20, still, always. Astral is kind of the new kid on the block this last year, and it's beautiful. You should check that out for sure. There's a great number of whiteboard sort of programs, like I was saying earlier, between map tools and any number of other simpler things that you can use like that in conjunction with a Discord voice and video channel where you can share screens, um, Zoom where you can share screens, Google Hangouts. All of those things are very possible and much easier to use than I was aware of at the time, or I would have been a lot more proactive. But I made sure I checked things out and learned things then. Definitely got into a lot of the seminars on Twitch and on Discord and on Zoom so that I could become more familiar with those. And those were sort of passively joining, right? So I wasn't playing, I didn't have to manipulate stuff and wasn't worried so much as I was about trying to use like a Roll20 or some other interface, gaming interface. Anyway, got through that, enjoyed it. Um, Made the most of it. I think everybody did, and I think there's something to be said for everybody being in the same boat and struggling. A shared struggle is something that bonds people, and I think that that was proven through GaryCon, and it made a lot of the rest of what we've been going through easier, and made us all better for it, for sure. The next big scare, of course, gaming wise, convention wise, was that tabletop events started crunching their numbers, and they realized with all these conventions that are shutting down, and although North Texas tried to make sure they could do something, and then did have a sort of a very limited physical convention. You got to remember, most of the gamers that go to the old school stuff, and of course the guests of honor in particular, are all older, a lot with pre-existing conditions or complications that could come from if you get infected with this thing. Uh, just all the more likely that it's going to take you out, and so the risk was high for a lot of these people, and very few wound up showing up for North Texas, although they tried to do a virtual thing as well, which was good on them. I think they'll be even more ready this next coming June to do a larger virtual presence if needs be, even if it is in conjunction with yet another smaller smaller physical convention in conjunction with it. Gen Con 2, like I say, waited and waited and waited. There's a lot of people that are banking on Gen Con. And let's not forget the vendors and the artists that go to these conventions and figure that's going to be one of the biggest things that fill their coffers, uh, their convention schedule, especially for artists and stuff. Not just insofar as what they get on site sales wise, but also because they're in the public eye at that point. They're seen on the websites as being a guest or a vendor or a sponsor or an artist or whatever whatever their focus is, and they're seen on site by however many people wander past or open up a program and see them listed or their picture or some of their art or some their logo or whatever happens to be put in front of people's eyes. Uh, they get almost none of that. One spot on a website for a virtual convention. It's been tough. People have tried a handful of different ways to raise the profiles of sponsors and vendors and artists during virtual conventions. I've seen a few different angles taken on it, giving them their own channels, giving them their own um, rooms on Discord servers and wherever else people are running things, but also when people are doing Twitch streams over the course of these conventions, whether they're streaming a game or they're streaming a seminar or whatever, doing giveaways, which it gets your name out there. It definitely gets you a lot of goodwill, but it's not like sitting at a vendor table and selling copies of whatever the newest release is. So tough. It's very tough for them, and I feel for them. I know. I know everybody's pulling for all of these companies to come out the other side of this strong, and I've certainly doing my best to pick up things that in the past I might have said, well, maybe this is out of my budget, or I should keep this money aside for. I'm not getting any younger. At some point, I'm going to have some medical issues that are just going to kick my ass. I have no doubt. But for now, things aren't bad, and I'm feeling fine. And I've got a little bit of the old stimulus money, and I don't want to. I don't want to just shove it in a mattress. I need to spread it around because that's what it's for. So I'm making sure that I'm doing the carry-out thing at restaurants as much as I can, and I'm picking up extra books and games and things from companies that I wouldn't normally have done under other situations. Potentially, some of it I would. Who am I kidding? I'm a gamer. I buy games. I get gaming stuff. I get supplies. Jeff says his wife says he's not allowed to have another heart attack. Well, you better listen to her. Sounds like she knows what she's talking about. Johnny says I was supposed to be doing a seminar at last GaryCon and wasn't thinking how we could go virtual. I know it happened. It changed so fast. They did a great job. The convention itself did a great job at pivoting to from a physical to a virtual convention, but I think many of us who were on board weren't skilled or didn't feel skilled, at least enough to make that pivot with them. And fortunately, there were a great many people that already had those skills that wouldn't have been able to go to the physical convention for one reason or another. They lived too far, it wasn't in their budget, they can't get off work, whatever in a normal year that stepped up and filled those voids so that there was plenty enough to do for everybody, and all sorts of things that you might not have seen, on an international stage now, instead of just on a here it is in sleepy little Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, with whoever happened to be there, right? So the pivot also brought with it certain benefits. Um, and I don't want to, jump up and down, because I don't want to be dancing on anybody's grave in this way, because I know a lot of people got really hurt by this happening. So I don't want to say, all's good. We did it anyway, and don't worry about it. I don't want to say that at all. Don't let that be implied. I definitely want to say, uh, if you know people that are vendors or artists that are being hurt by not getting to show their wares or show their talents at these conventions that they rely on so much, uh, pick something up from them. Pick up a piece of art. Pick up a game. Pick up the latest book. Even if you pick it up to give it as a gift, you don't have to. You don't always have to get stuff for yourself, right? I mean, under any other situation, you'd be buying gifts and whatnot. Anyway, well, spend a little less money you know, at the big chain stores this year. Don't get another big screen TV. Pick up a couple of games with that money and give those out as gifts to people. So, I mean, we're all in this together over the entire world, but I can't help but feel more of a kinship with gamers, such that it makes me feel like I want to herald them. I want to champion them. And speaking of champion, Con of Champions was the next virtual. What a great segue! What was the next virtual convention that I had the pleasure of being involved in? Now, remember, I've got physically in a normal year Gary Con. I've got a gaming hoopla, which is a big board gaming thing in southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois. Um, I've got possibly a mini hoopla, which happens. There is the Con of the Lakes, a 1 day thing run by Chris Brown and company. Um, just wonderful people who have picked up to do a nice 1 day VFW Hall event. I believe it's VFW. I don't think it's American Legion. Over in Silver Lake, Twin Lakes area, rather. That happens in June. Nexus. I'm wearing a GaryCon shirt today, but you'll often see me in Nexus shirts. That happens in June. Chris Hoffner and those wonderful folks do a convention in Milwaukee that I try to get to. I try to get at least 1 day out to Gamehole Con when it's a physical convention every year. It's kind of just beyond that easy travel each day sort of thing, and budgetary wise, it's tough for me to do a full convention with the prices of hotels and all of that other stuff. So, but I try to get out for a day. I'll drive out. Because the trouble you run into running to Madison from Lake Geneva is if you want to get out there and spend a full day out there, it's not the hour and 10 minutes it would take if you're driving in the middle of the night when there's no traffic on the road. It's an hour and a half, maybe more if there's some sort of an accident on in the traffic piles up. So it can take a long time. At the time you want to be going, which is early in the morning, you're going to hit some rush hour traffic. You get there, you spend the day there. I'm not a spring chicken driving after a long day, so I can't stay there till late. So I got to come back in the evening. I don't want to come back too early because then I hit the rush hour traffic the other way, right? But it's a good sized town, so they've got some traffic on the roads. Anyway, I get out there for a day most years. I think at this point, it is a treat getting to do Gamehole Con virtually this year. As soon as I heard they were going virtual, and here's a guy, Alex Gamera, who heads it up, made the call very early. As soon as he knew that he could make the call, rather than go through the motions and have everybody spend all the time putting things together with an eye toward a physical convention and then have a lot of that effort fall by the wayside when we wind up having to cancel closer to or in the 11th hour or right, a month before or something like that, rather than do all of that and string it out, knowing as much as we knew at that point in June, I think he made the call. He said, no, we're going virtual. Let's put our efforts into this. Let's get it ready as a virtual convention starting now. It'll be all the better for it. And I think that shows. I think there's no doubt that the smoothness that everybody working on it. Royce Thickpen, big help for me. Thank you very much putting together. Of course, if you follow the OK Grognard show, that we've been doing a weekly giveaway, and I just randomly pick somebody who's chimed in on the stream chat that's a follower of the show. Randomly pick somebody off a list of people that have chimed in over the course of a week and do a little giveaway. And for the last 20 weeks, I've been doing a virtual badge for Gamehole Con. And it's been a real delight seeing any number of people that have been going to it and hopefully enjoying themselves with the events over the course of this weekend so far and the rest of today and tomorrow. Hopefully everybody will have a great time. I also want to say, just checking the time here. Oh, okay. I'm all right. I've got another 13 minutes or so, a little less, because there's a couple more conventions to talk about. I've talked about the bookends. I've mentioned Tabletop Events Con of Champions was a benefit. That was pretty easy. That was the first thing I ran some stuff for, and I ran some isolated scenarios. I ran 3 scenarios twice, and then did a couple of seminars. So 4, 6, 12, 16, 18 hours, something like that. I forget what it all worked out to be. Oh, I ran a board game too on tabletopia.com, which is a really good virtual board game interface. I mean, it's like if you took all the stuff that you pile onto the table out of the box and just said, here it all is virtually. You just have to use a mouse hand to move the stuff around. It doesn't do any of the stuff for you. Oops. Oh, I see. Thought I broke something. Yeah, a clip-on thing that's down here for a camera. Anyway, I did quite a few hours so that I could get a champion tag and to help them out. My feeling, of course, was tabletop events, the backbone of so many small conventions for interfacing to create events, to sign up events, to register for events, to buy your badges, all of that stuff built in, and so many conventions that rely on them. The fact that they were going to lose so much money, they were looking at possibly shuttering, didn't want to see it. So when they announced Con of Champions, I jumped right on board and filled out as many hours as I could to join in supporting them. And it worked out great. And not only did they accumulate enough of a war chest to see them through the rest of 2020 and on into 2021, although it's a diminished revenue stream, they're still helping out with a lot of the virtual conventions, which they don't foresee everybody trying that. At the time you think, well, if the physical convention gets canceled, they'll just pick up next year. But so many have been pivoting to virtual conventions that I think they've still managed to have at least a lower but a more modest revenue stream from those. I think that's helped. And I think also, I think I don't know if they merged with or were bought by Board Game Geek, if they're now a subsidiary of BoardGameGeek.com, the board game website, essentially a elaborate wiki. It's a fantastic site. It's obviously the gold standard in gaming, board gaming, cataloging websites and informational. It's just fantastic. Everybody knows. I don't know why I have to mention it. But now they're tied to them. So they're not just guaranteed on into 2021, but I think they are now going to be, as long as the Board Game Geek stays alive, as long as people are gaming, whether it's online, they've figured out a way to do it virtually now more regularly, whether it's online, whether it's physical. I think tabletop events will be well protected going forward. Jay Scott put together a fantastic small convention for the first weekend of October. Was its first year. It's a virtual convention. I have been told by him that this will always be a virtual convention. It's not his intention to just do it virtually for now and then switch to physical as soon as that becomes a possibility. Because the way he likes or now does present his games visually online through a Twitch stream is the way he enjoys doing it. You know what? And if he was going to run his games at some location, be it out in Jersey where he's actually from, or in the Midwest to try to find a way to put yourself in the center of the country so you can draw from all over the place, all over the U.S. in any event. And let's not forget, people from Canada, people from Europe, people from all over the world are Australia interested in playing in games set in Gary's original setting of Greyhawk. And this is a fan convention honoring that great setting, and just wonderful. And he did a great job. And so many people involved. There's people that have a whole fifth edition conversion and writing original adventures set in Greyhawk. Now they avoid some copyright issues by having the person who's authoring it run it. That's the point anyway, right? Anybody who's a fan can run using a setting at a convention. Nothing wrong with that. And you get to see so many great DMs, Greyhawk DMs, running these fascinating looks and their own takes on this is how this portion of Greyhawk works in my home games. And it's just wonderful. Some more power to him. Autumn Revel, which is a Gary Con mini convention, ran the second weekend of October. One sad note there in regard to Autumn Wars, a HMGS historical Historical Miniatures Gaming Society Midwest chapter event, which was right here at the Grand Geneva, ran the second weekend of October too. Smaller crowd, again, distancing, masks, people being careful. But if you're a miniatures wargamer, you don't pivot to a virtual. How do you do that? I mean, I guess you could kind of do it the way Lord Gasumba, Jay Scott, does his games, where you set up a bunch of cameras and then people are zooming in, and then they are telling you how to move their armies around. I don't know. Then you've got to use all the stuff that one guy has, and there are pillars to these hobbies that are part of what you want to do with them, and that includes painting and collecting and painting and assembling these armies yourself. When you go to a miniatures war game convention, you're bringing the things that your labors of love to share with other enthusiasts of miniature war games, and for that to try to happen online, that doesn't work. Miniatures wargaming is a tough nut to crack when it comes to pivoting to virtual, and I don't see how you do it. I'm going to write something up in regard to this and Autumn Revel for the OS Zine that I got coming up, and go into more detail on it. But just a tough break for them. The fact that they were also up against Autumn Revel that weekend meant that I was already tied into running a bunch of games for Autumn Revel. So there you go. But Luke has said, and Autumn Revel is not a virtual convention that's meant to stay a virtual convention. When that can become physical again, it's going to be a sort of a counterweight to Spring's GaryCon, a smaller, more intimate, generally speaking, convention. And also, I think he has said that he would like to move it into September. Let's see, October, November, December, January, February, March, and that would put it halfway around the, speaking of Luke's birthday today, September 2nd. Yes, Lord Gasama, yeah, absolutely. September 2nd is Ernie's birthday. That's Ernie Gygax's day, in case you forgot to celebrate this year. I don't know if you can do it as early as September 2nd, because that's also Labor Day, right? And I don't know that you want to try to do a convention over a major holiday weekend. People have so many other commitments, whether it's barbecue or family events or whatever, that I think Nexus found this out with Memorial Day weekend, and when they attempted to try one year to have the convention over Memorial Day weekend. People are off work anyway. They'll come out to a convention. Turns out a lot of them already have plans for other things that are traditionally tied to Memorial Day and, I would think, Labor Day weekend for them. So not that easy to switch over. In any event, Autumn Revel went really well as well. Couple of games. I've been running the sandbox game I was talking about earlier. If that moves up into September, well, I'll tell you, certainly missed Gaming Hoopla, but the virtual conventions have been a interesting and fun substitute. None of this stuff will ever replace face-to-face gaming for a lot of people, myself included. But I'm not going to sit on my hands when these are the tools I have available. I will take advantage of the tools as much as I can and do it. So there we are. That is GM reviews for Saturday here on the OK Grognard Show from beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. I want to thank everybody for joining me today or picking up with this later on YouTube. I want to say, hey, we're on every day, 10 a.m. Central. Like tomorrow, rules retrospective tomorrow. Still don't know exactly what I'm going to look at for that, but some first edition rules, some chunk of the first edition rules. I want to pick something up that'll be fun to talk about, interesting to talk about, that'll fill 50 minutes. I usually just do a half hour, and that can stand alone. They won't have to carry over into a part two later on down the line, whatever. Mondays, weekly news and announcements, cartography and world building on Tuesday, campaign discussion on Wednesday, GMing tips every Thursday. We are building adventures on Friday. Back around the horn to GM reviews. I want to thank everybody. If you're catching up with this on YouTube, please do subscribe to the channel. Give us a thumbs up on any videos you watch. Feel free to make some comments. If you have any constructive criticism, it's always appreciated, helping us make the show better. Thank you, everyone, from beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. This has been the OK Grognard Show. Bye-bye.